Testament. I would like to introduce you to my action figure Jesus. I
John
briefly see.
15:5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
So we have our little Bible figure, action figure Jesus here. So don't worry, he does have blue eyes because, of course, Jesus looks a lot like a Eastern European or a Western European. But kind of fun little thing. The kids like it. It used to be in the box, and someone got it for me a long time ago, and it was unboxed, and then they just took it out of the box, and it should be played with. So, thinking about Jesus, thinking about our time studying Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, I'm curious as to your opinions and your thoughts on the Gospel of Matthew. One of the questions I'm gonna ask you tomorrow is just kind of an overall, who is Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew to you? What does he do? What does he feel? What sense do you get? If you only had the Gospel of Matthew to go on, what would you take away about who Jesus is? Yeah, my my initial impression would be, I think John the Baptist is a major character in this story, and we hear more about John the Baptist. We open with John the Baptist. We have Jesus talk about John the Baptist in the middle, and then we have John the Baptist when he dies. And I don't believe, but I would be curious, but I'm pretty sure, you like that certainty, that the other Gospels don't have as much emphasis on there. John has him. He's there, of course, because he is this character who ushers in, makes the path straight, gets ready for Jesus. But the emphasis on John the Baptist, the way that he kind of marks his ministry, I think is unique to Matthew, and it makes sense because Matthew again is really trying to show this Jewish lineage that a prophet came before to prepare the way, as we have expected prophets to come, as we have not heard the voice of God. So one of the big reflections on Jesus coming onto the scene is we haven't had a prophet since Malachi. So we've had hundreds of years where there has been silence from God. We've had the Maccabean revolt. We've had all this political turmoil, all this unrest. We've had the nation of Israel not be on solid ground, be kind of tossed about, but we haven't had a prophet until John the Baptist comes and he starts sounding and acting and doing prophet things, right? He really starts to be this prophet in the way that prophets are, and that's a really important part of John the Baptist's ministry. Is he's laying down the groundwork, he's preparing the way, he's opening up the doors so that we can see Jesus, and Jesus acknowledges that. Jesus brings John the Baptist in. I have a great reminder just above my desk that Kelly got me is a poster of, or I'm sorry, it is a painting. It's a picture of a painting of a altar piece that is in, I believe it's Germany, but it could be um, France. I don't remember exactly. I should, but it's supposedly hung above Karl Barth's desk as well, and it has Jesus on the cross. Well, here, let me see if I can turn this for you. You can see it a little bit better. So that is it, and you can see Jesus on the cross there, and that character on the right, so pointing to him, is John the Baptist. And the wonderful reminder that this picture is that John the Baptist is pointing to Jesus, and that is our responsibility as well. Is we are pointers to Christ. We are not the Christ, but we are the ones who say, look, there he is. There's the Messiah, the one who's been promised. And that's a reminder for me of my ministry. I think all of us, we have this temptation, this want in ourselves to become the Messiah, but we are simply pointers to the one who's done the work, to the Jesus who has done that. And that was even John the Baptist, right? As important as he is, um, as prophesied even as he is, as written about as he is. Who is he ultimately? One must come after me who is greater than I, who I'm not able to even untie the thongs of his sandals. That's how mighty he is. Now, what's surprising then about this Messiah is that he comes to serve. He comes to get down into the dirt and to wash our feet. Yes, he has that position of authority and power and might because he is God. But how does he choose to use that? That's a really, really fascinating thing, right? And can you imagine just John the Baptist even going, whoa, this is different than I thought. And John the Baptist's disciples come to him at one point and say, are you who we've been waiting for? And his simple answer is, look around. What do you see happening? These are the things that the Messiah does. So, looking at that, we will also notice that Matthew, he has that wonderful Sermon on the Mount, the long passage that has so many familiar things. He ups the ante in the Sermon on the Mount about holiness, right? And you can imagine that what he's doing with that teaching is, again, we know, we've been here, right? We've walked this path. We've seen the people of God go from a people who have the temple and tabernacle into a people who have been outcast. They no longer have their land. The temple's been destroyed once. Out of that temple being destroyed, you have the Pharisees coming up. What are the Pharisees doing? Well, the Pharisees are teachers. They're pointers to the law, and they're trying to get people to follow the law perfectly. So Jesus comes onto the scene, and he has these Pharisees and these Sadducees who find great pride in their ability to follow the law, and then are forcing other people to do this at whatever cost is necessary. Well, the way Jesus points to this is by upping the states of the law. So you have heard it said that you shall not murder your brother. I tell you that if you even look at your brother with hatred in your heart, you have already committed murder. You go, whoa. And that just sits in us, and we go, oh, that's a big deal, right? And those are the steps of that make us aware of our desperate need for the law. Our desperate need for Jesus. The law brings about, oh, you can't do this on your own, Pharisees. Pharisees, you've been trying to make sure your actions are good. I'll tell you, it's not just about your actions. Look at your heart. Look at, great job not committing adultery, but you're lusting. Great job not murdering, but you're hating. These are things also that separate you from the Father. And then Jesus comes and makes a way for the Father. All of this to get us to see Christ in his fullness, so that we, again, and you've probably heard me say this ad nauseum, it's probably up on your board. Pastor Scott's going to say this again. What am I going to say? We are legalists. We long for the rules and the order, and we think if we follow the order, then we will get what's right, and the Proverbs lifestyle. And it just doesn't work. And then we even believe, yeah, look at how good I'm being. And then Jesus ups the stakes so that we go to this position where Paul was. Well, then, who can be saved? Ah, praise be to Christ, the one who can do the work. Therefore, it's not about my ability to practice the law perfectly. It's about my ability to utterly see Christ as the only hope I have, because I am a broken mess and I need him. And that's, what Jesus does as he ups the law, right? He brings more and more things for us to feel, where can we be saved? Oh, on that tree, Calvary, 2,000 years ago. Okay. We don't have as many parables as we will in Luke. Luke loves to use the parables. He's a parable gospel. Matthew has parables, of course, but he also has a lot of teaching of Jesus in there as well. Then we get to the end, and we get to Matthew 26, and remember how I said, all of 3 years is done between, well, really, all of Jesus' ministry is between Matthew 5 and Matthew 25, because the 1 through 5 is just setting up that story. And then you get to 5 and you have the Sermon on the Mount. Then you have Jesus' ministry, right? Moving, doing things. And then we get to Jerusalem and we slow down in Jerusalem. He's actually already in Jerusalem. Let me see. I don't recall just off of hand. And if you do, you can point to me when he entered. Okay, so he's already in 24. He's in Jerusalem. He's lamenting here. Is this when he's coming in? Um, yeah, I think so. Probably here, 23-ish, he is coming in because that's when he is looking upon Jerusalem and says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones of those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. So he's looking at the city. He's heartbroken because I love this city. I love these people. I wish they understood how often I wanted to gather you. One of the big things that I think is worth noting is that Jesus is not afraid to use feminine names of himself. It's easy to just strictly see Jesus as a man because he was a man. He walked around as a man. So that's very easy to go. Yeah, okay. But God kind of has all of those best qualities of men and women. God has that wonderful compassion, that hen to gather her brood under her, and Jesus puts that on himself and God. Really interesting, right? Especially 2,000 years ago. So and we'll get to these things later, but the absolute celebration I think of women in the New Testament is very very clear to me, and I think it's a wonderful place to be. And so just kind of a thing to note there. That's kind of interesting. So Jesus is in Jerusalem. They're going to kill him, right? Which is the plan. And they think this will solve the problem because this is typically what solves the problem. Either we have the threat of violence, the threat of death, or we'll go through with it and you will be dead. And if you're dead, problem solved. And that's as far as the world's vision can go. It can go to the point of threatening you with your life, or it can go to take your life. And if the power of your life being taken is released, if the government, the state, the people can't hold that over you, and you are not fearing death in that same way, then you have freedom, and that's the freedom that Christ has. Looking at his death, he knew it had to come. He experiences pain, and it hurt when the nails went through his wrists and through his feet. I mean, it was utter pain. He was and we're going to have to go into this of why have you forsaken me, right? On the cross. What is it for him to cry out, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani? That what is it for him to be alone on that cross? I have a kind of an endless question that when we hang out with Jesus and are in the glory and just enjoying creation remade and tasting wine that's not tainted by sin and cheese that's not tainted by sin, all of those things, having this conversation with Jesus and just saying, what does it mean for you to be triune, for the God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, but yet you went to the cross and you became sin and you were forsaken? How much of that was you alone in the Trinity? How much of that was the whole Godhead on the tree there? Those are questions we'll never know. But there was not only this tremendous agony of physical pain, that he also the absolute agony of being made sin. He had been perfectly holy, been perfectly righteous, been without that forever, and then choosing to take on our sin. Not just take on. I think that makes it a little bit lighter. Like, oh, I took on this coat. I covered myself with this cloak. No, to become, to be named that thing. So, and I've used this before, I believe, on this study, but Luther has this great quote where he says, on the way to the cross, Jesus was the greatest adulterer, the greatest murderer, the greatest thief, the greatest liar that there ever was in human history, because he became all of those things so that we might become the righteousness of God. he became sin who knew no sin, so that we might become the righteousness of God. That verse alone could just put us into meditation and going, what does that mean? How great a love that he becomes. And again, he doesn't just passively, oh man, this happened, chooses to become. So it's not that the cross was easy. It's not that the cross didn't have the most sacrifice ever. It's that he knew that these people and their thought of putting him on the cross did not have the final word. He believed that there was a final word past death, and that was resurrection. And that's the hope that we have as Christians, is that in any situation, it's easy to believe that the final word is what this thing that we see, but we have the privilege of going, what is past that final word? And that is the God of resurrection. So I think it's that power that was taken away. The power of them saying, aha, we have the most important, the most final thing that we can do to you is kill you. And Jesus says, that's not true. Because God resurrects dead things. Watch. Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia, when he is going to the table, right? And he gets killed by the White Witch, and the girls are watching from behind the bushes. And they're going, why is he letting this happen? He could, with one swipe of his paw, take everybody out. And they mourn him as he dies. And then he comes back to life. If you haven't read the Chronicles of Narnia, I'm sorry. I just ruined the first one for you, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. But he goes back to life. And then he tells the girls, he says, she didn't know about the deep magic. There was something greater. She thought that this death on that stone table would give her all the power. But I had taken up the place of Edmund. And she didn't know the deep magic, that because of my sacrifice, there'd be freedom. I mean, and that's just ding bells of Jesus, 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 right? Lewis is trying to say, look at Jesus. This is what, there's this story, I don't know if it's true. I sure hope it is. That Tolkien and Lewis, we know that they were part of a writing club named the Inklings that met in a bar in England. And couldn't you imagine being in that club? And supposedly, this is the story, I don't know if it's true, that they would exchange pages of the books they were writing. And Tolkien would give Lewis pages of The Lord of the Rings. And Lewis would read this and say, this is the gospel? Because they were both writing gospel analogies. And he said, you can't even see any of Jesus in here. And then Lewis would give Tolkien his pages of The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Tolkien would be like, this is just the Bible with a lion. There's nothing more and they would get at each other because they were going about using fiction to tell this story of Jesus in very different ways. But that deep magic, that truth that is past our beliefs, truth that's past the things that we struggle with, death, that God resurrects. That's the point here. And then he has chosen to bring us into that resurrection life. Not just now, not just forever, because we'll never die, but now. That is the just mind-blowing thing there. So, now I'm preaching. And I can't wait to hear your guys' insights tomorrow. Be ready with verses that you might have questions over. Be ready to answer the question of, if you just had Matthew, what kind of Jesus would you have and know? Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. Thank you for the time with the people online.